I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I'm excited for this episode. I know we got a good one for you. Joining me is Ben from End of the World News. Ben, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing? And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Of course. Absolutely. Thank you for having me on your show as well. That's how we kind of met here. Actually, no, we met in a
chat room on the Biblical Hitman podcast that you were on.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And that was pretty cool because we were exchanging some banter in there about whatever the episode was talking about. And I was like, hey, man, I want to talk to you more. Or I don't know, maybe I said, come on the show or something like that. And you're like, check your inbox.
I just sent you a DM. Yeah.
You just said the same thing to me in a private message. So that's cool. I love when it happens. Like we were both on the same page about having conversation. So man, it's good when things sort of organically, happen that way. But I want to give you a chance to tell everybody about you and your show and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Ben. I have a weekly show called End of the World News, the podcast. And that's where we discuss domestic and geopolitical politics through a biblical worldview. And when I say a biblical worldview, I'm talking about Genesis 6:4 to Deuteronomy 32 to Ezekiel 38 and 39. And the book of Revelations expands on that. And all the way to Ephesians, when Paul talks about we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against worldly governors. So that's my worldview. And what I do on my show is try to explain what's going on through that worldview. Because if you take a look around this world and you don't have a biblical worldview, none of it really makes sense. And I think as followers of Jesus, followers of God, right, it's important to understand so we don't get pulled into the trapping of this propaganda mind matrix, which I think is ultimately controlled by Satan.
Yeah. And I mean, with that verse, not by flesh and blood, but principalities. I don't know what the modern church thinks that means, but I think I think it's very useful and very helpful to sort of look at that again and wrap your mind around principality. What is that? I think a great place to start is Deuteronomy 32. I like that about you, man. We're on the same page with that. I mean, I've talked to you before on your show, and you were bringing up passages that I like to bring up. So we're talking the same language here, man. I appreciate that. But you said Ezekiel 38 and
Ezekiel 38 and 39, which is Old Testament prophecy about the end of days. And that's really important to understand, like I said, when you're trying to make sense of what's going on, because I think that there is a network of principalities and powers, just call them fallen gods and demonic offspring, that actually ruled this world from a spiritual realm. And they actually possess the worldly governors, which would be these Babylonian bloodlines, in carrying out the orders of their fallen angel parents. And I personally think these fallen angels and these demonic offspring are trying to manufacture the biblical end of days in hopes that will trigger God to send Jesus back. So, yeah, I mean, it all stems from there. When people say, who's they? It's these fallen gods. It's these demons. And if you read what, Enoch says about these demons and what they're supposed to do, wage war against humans, right? Cause chaos and all that type of stuff. And you took a look around at all these, worldly governors, politicians, leaders of institutions, religious ones too. I don't think there's any better explanation than they're all possessed by demons.
Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about that. Elites, powerful people, people in high hierarchy positions, bringing about the end days, like what you're talking about. Like that notion, when I first heard that, I wasn't sold on it. But I'm coming around to it a little bit more. I do think that maybe there's some of that going on. It sounds kind of crazy, but I mean, I remember back when I was young and the internet just came out. And one of the first websites I found was this esoteric Manson page. There was like everybody was on there decoding Marilyn Manson songs. It was pretty wild.
Oh yeah.
And they were explaining, I was like 13, man, and I was like, man, they're talking about like all this occult meaning. It was very interesting to me at the time. And I remember this idea was getting thrown around on that page that he was maybe bringing about the end times. And then later, he put out that album called Antichrist Superstar. And I remember hearing him in an interview say that. I don't know if he was trolling Christians or if he was serious, or it's probably a little bit of both, because that's kind of how he like maneuvers, is like there's seriousness to what he's doing, and some of it's also trolling. So, but he said it himself that he was like, well, let's see what happens. Let me see if I could put out an album and try to bring about the end times. So this as a notion is more than just a notion. My point here broadly is that this is a reality for some people. Because I think
Yeah,
he
and I
was
mean, even
getting.
Jack,
Oh, go ahead. No, I want to hear what you have
even
to say.
Jack Parsons was trying to do that with the Mystery Babylon workings, right? He literally went out to the desert in Pasadena with the future head of Scientology, perform sex magic to bring on the whore Babylon with only one goal other than to bring on the end of days. So I think humans have been trying to do this, who are possessed by demons, for a long time. And there's a bunch of occult ritual that goes into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
No, go ahead.
And one more thing, the reason I also think they're trying to manufacture it is because halfway through the last 7 years, these fallen gods, or these, principalities, or these stars that, Revelation actually calls them, they're given the keys to the abyss. And all these fallen gods from before the flood are released back onto the earth. And their leader is Abaddon the Destroyer in Hebrew, or Apollyon the Destroyer in Greek. So I think part of the reasons they want to manufacture this is, for one, their final rendezvous with God, but also they want to escape this pit prison, or the abyss that's located in the underworld in Tartarus. And maybe that's what the actual alien invasion is.
Mm-hmm. Sort of an abracadabra opening up a portal to the Middle Earth or whatever's down there. Sort of an occult ritual to bring about the opening of a gate. That because these things are locked away somewhere. Like that's throughout a lot of the old texts. And I mean, I even heard people suggest that Abaddon, Apollyon, is either Azazel or Semyaza, who were pretty much the two top dog watchers who led the sort of rebellion, the Mount Hermon event. They came down, and we know they took an oath, and they bound themselves by mutual implications, and said, okay, we're doing this together. But there was sort of like it seemed like Semyaza was like spearheading it, and Azazel had a big role in that as well. So I've heard it suggested by some Bible scholars that Abaddon is Semyaza. And I guess my point is like we are told in the book of Enoch and in other texts that those were the two watchers specifically that got locked away. So we know they're locked away according to the text.
Well, Azazel is a destroyer type god, and he taught, humans how to create weapons and go to war with each other. And what I find interesting, I'd also like to throw in Shiva the destroyer in there as well. And if you know anything about CERN, and Elon Musk has come out and said they're ripping into new dimensions, not that I trust him, he is paving the way for the Antichrist. But I wonder if Shiva the Destroyer is also that god, because there's a giant statue located in CERN right in the center of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about the Yuga cycle, which the polytheists like to believe in, at least the Hindus do, the passing of an age, there's many that believe the end of the current Yuga cycle, which is the Kali Yuga, and Kali is some type of demonic god ruling over us, is in 2025. And within their belief system, Shiva comes out, does his cosmic dance, destroys the entire system so that Brahman, another deity, can rebuild it. So I also think that, you can even throw in Shiva the Destroyer into that conversation.
Oh man, me and you're going to have to talk about CERN. We don't have to do it today, but I do want to comment on that. Whenever they were building CERN, setting it up, they uncovered a temple to Apollyon.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I've got all the information on it. An ancient Roman temple to Apollyon was uncovered during the construction of CERN. And some of the things I've read about that said that they were digging way down into the earth there to make a tunnel for this thing, because the collider needs a big tunnel. And some of the things I saw said 315 feet below ground is how far they went in some areas. So, speaking about entity locked underground, CERN also had to dig way down deep into the ground. And that temple to Apollyon, before it was a temple, was said to be a tunnel, a bottomless pit to the underworld.
Not a coincidence.
That's why they put the temple there in the first place, because before it was anything, it's already a sacred place. People thought that this is an entryway to Sheol, to the underworld. So, yeah, man, we can have that conversation about is Shiva associated with Apollyon?
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I think there's multiple gods that are associated with that same deity, right? I think that all these different cultures, they all worship the same gods, but they had a different name for them. And just take a look, the name of CERN, right? If you watch, you just got to Google this and you type in open ceremony or open ritual for CERN, every time they crank that thing up, they have like a 15 to 20-minute long dance team.
Right.
And one of them, there's literally a goat god with horns dancing in a costume. And then when you look up the Celtic mythology, you come to find out that there is a god named Cernunnos that what looks like a horned god. So it's all tied together.
Yeah. I don't want to give away too much, because I don't know if you knew this, but me and Steven did a show on CERN. We just haven't put it out yet. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that.
Well, we are talking about, in that episode, we're talking about some of the same stuff that you and I are talking about here. And I don't want to, I'll just say this. I'll just say this because I don't want to give away that whole episode, but let's just say there's some very strong ties between Cernunnos and Shiva.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I'll just leave it at that.
I'll definitely tune in for that one.
And like archaeologically speaking, I've got proof of that, and I show that in the episode. So yeah, I'm with you, man. Like I think we mentioned this when we talked before. These gods go by many names. They change hands throughout the millennia, throughout different cultures. As people migrate, they take that god with them, and by the time they get to other lands, languages are changing, situations are changing, and sometimes the name of the entity changes, but it's still the same practice. It's still, so yeah, we see that with Ishtar, which she has, I don't even know how many names she has, a lot, she's the Asherah in the Bible. She's Aphrodite to the Greeks, Ishtar in Sumerian, Inanna sometimes in Sumerian, Ishtar in Babylon,
Queen of Heaven.
Queen of Heaven. Yeah. So like many names,
Oh, for sure. I mean, and that's crazy that, the Roman Catholic Church actually assigned the name of the Queen of Heaven to Jesus's mother. And little do they know what the Old Testament says about people who make cakes for the Queen of Heaven. And that's a direct tie to Ishtar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. There was a point in time that personally I think this was alluded to in the Old Testament, where there's a point in time in the Old Testament where God starts coming down hard on the Israelites, telling them, destroy the Asherah poles, destroy the groves. The groves are associated with the Ishtar worship, by the way. And at some point, this goddess worship, goddess veneration went underground. It didn't totally go away, though. It started to be a sort of a teaching that you would only learn if you were initiated into the secret societies. They held up a lot of the goddess worship. The mysteries became, or let's say, the goddess worship in many ways became the mysteries. Everybody from Helena Blavatsky to high level Freemasons have acknowledged that. And it seems as if some of that somehow seeped through the cracks and got into Catholicism. It seems as if that's the case. I don't want to tick off my Catholic listeners. I'm not coming down against you and your beliefs, but this is this is out of their hands. This is something people high up in the Vatican would have done. So,
And
what do
I'm
you
with
think
you.
about that?
And I'm with you 100%. And today, when we talk about the institutions that claim to represent the truth of the Bible, just know that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the institutions. And
Right.
they've infiltrated both the body of Christ and the ancient Israelites, right? The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. And just like the ancient Israelites had their Pharisees, I think so does the body. And I think that started when, what's his name, Constantine, legalized Christianity and incorporated Mithraism with the story of Jesus. Now, does it mean if you go to a Catholic church, you're not saved? Absolutely not. It's not the church that saves. It's your relationship with the Most High God. It's your relationship with Jesus. That's what saves you. So yeah, when we talk about these institutions, regardless of where you're from and what you identify as, just understand it's about the institution and has nothing to do with the people who believe those faiths.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes every religious institution needs a little reform. That's just how it goes. Bad ideas seep in. It happens in this community. We know that people come in here and try to seed bad ideas. And I like your point about the Israelites having their Pharisees, because they absolutely did. There were bad ideas seeping into the Israelite camps. One of them, going back to Ishtar, would be Asherah, and their Pharisees started saying, "Oh yeah, Asherah is the consort of uh, Yahweh," right? And I think that's where God put the foot down in the Old Testament. Said, "Okay, tear down the poles."
That's enough here. Stop conflating me with this, demon goddess of yours.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of people, modern day, people into the esoteric stuff, will say, "Oh yeah, Yahweh was a pagan god." No, there were some Pharisees within the Israelites camp that were saying that. That wasn't every every Israelite. It wasn't all Jews holding to that belief.
Yeah,
So
just read Psalms 82 and you will quickly find out when God judges these other sons of God that he clearly is not associated with them in that nature.
yeah, yeah. So how much of this stuff, I want to kind of get us close to maybe pulling into some of the stuff you want to talk about today. How much of this stuff do you think affects the rulers today, or what we're going to talk about today? Politicians, maybe even.
Oh, I think it affects them wholeheartedly, completely. Like I said, I really think there is a network of these fallen gods and demonic offspring that literally possess these worldly governors. And the Bible kind of lays it all out, at least the system of control that we see today. And I think that starts off with Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 9. So if you mind if I read that real quick.
Please.
And this is basically the control structure on how I think these countries and these empires are set up today. So here we have Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 9. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. So right before all this happened, all the people spoke the same language and they lived around each other. And they got up to no good and they tried to build the Tower of Babel, which I believe was actually a gateway or a portal to the heavens, which means they could also go down to the underworld, maybe similar to something we see at CERN. And God was like, no, this is before the prescribed time. You guys are up to no good. I need to put an end to this. So that, as we know, he then separated the people, changed their languages, and assigned a lowercase god to rule over each one of them when he outlined the borders of all these nations. And I think that also ties into the table of nations when it talks about the descendants of Noah, especially the ones not in the line of Jesus. And I think that these bloodlines that were created from this table of nations still control all the countries today. Now, the borders might have shifted and the empires might have changed, which Daniel 2 suggests would happen. There's going to be 4 major empires. But I think these ruling bloodlines and this demonic presence within these ruling bloodlines still exists today. And to understand that, I mean, to understand what's going on, understand that these people are trying to fulfill this Ezekiel 38 and 39. And when you understand that, then all of history, especially before 1948, when the nation of Israel was reestablished, some think it was a little bit later than that. I'm not here to argue with it, but I think this all lines up with the fig tree generation. And when you understand how those things came about with these bloodlines, you're like, wait a minute, these guys are trying to manufacture this.
Man, yeah. I mean, I see that too. I mean, I think that a lot of magical stuff was happening. I don't know if that's the right word, but a lot of what would be the right word? Uh, a lot of things were happening in 1947 that are setting something up in a very biblical way. Um, so they had those talks of about creating Israel in 47. Of course, they did it in 48. But as they were having those talks, they were making discoveries in the caves, and they were finding the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they were finding, the Book of Enoch, kind of bringing that back in. And I think, in that book, it says this is meant for a later generation, that which is to come. And I have a feeling that what that's referring to is now, fig tree generation. And I think 47, 48 was a big, big mile marker for what we're seeing.
I'm with you. And I think the plans go all the way before that, too. I mean, even before World War One. Let's just take a look at history in terms of World War One and World War Two. Now, before World War One, you had this thing called the Balfour Declaration. And that was a letter that Lord Rothschild wrote to Lord Balfour when he told him his intentions of wanting to establish Israel where currently Ottoman-controlled Palestine was. And of course, they agreed to it. So what do you have as a result? You have World War One. And after that, what happens? The British Empire takes control of Ottoman-controlled Palestine. But for the prophecy to be fulfilled, all the Jews from all over the world have to return to Israel. But no one in Europe or the United States wanted to return because they were comfortable. They thought they were citizens of that country, but they wouldn't. So what do you have as a result? Well, you have World War II, and you have the rise of this occultist, Hitler. And he was an occultist. Just look at the symbolism all over the place. He gave his speeches from the throne of Zeus. And he actually had this thing called the Habara Agreement, which was before World War II really started going. And you know what year it was in? 1933. And you had that 33 in there. 33. And that was agreement between the Zionist factions in Germany and the Nazi factions in Germany that allowed around 66,000 of the richest Jews in Germany to move back to Israel and even bring back 2/3 of their wealth. You can all look this all up. It's all real. And you think, well, that's odd. You would think that the Nazi faction opposed the Zionist faction. But as you can see, I think we all see that today. They actually worked hand in hand in making this happen. But once again, the Jews in Europe did not want to move. So you have this rise of Hitler. You have all the atrocities that went on. I'm not here to argue about numbers. The first thing that you lose is the truth and more. And I think both sides get it a little bit wrong. But what did that do? It gave the Jews in Europe a reason to go back to Israel, further, worrying about further persecution in the future. And it also gave the world an excuse to support that new state at all costs. And by the way, I grew up Jewish, so I'm not ragging on the Jews or anything like that. I'm just trying to look at history objectively.
Yeah.
And that's one half of the prophecy, right? So all the Jews in Europe moved back to Israel. Well, what's the problem now? We have a bunch of Jews in America specifically. So I think that all these governments worship these fallen gods, including the government of Israel. And I think they're trying to manufacture the last part of this prophecy by committing all these atrocious acts within Gaza, within all over the place. Because what you're seeing for the first time ever, public consent or public opinion on Israel has vastly changed, right? We used to support them at no cost. And now there's this, even, Hitler's brought back up in the zeitgeist of what's going on. And I think that they're acting in such a manner to turn the nations on Israel, which is all part of the prophecy, right? So once all the Jews go back to Israel, all the nations turn on them. And there's this giant 7-year war, the war of Gog and Magog. And I think they've been trying to facilitate this ever since way before World War I.
Mm-hmm. Providential was the word I was looking for before to describe the things that were coming about in 46 and 47. It's a very providential time. Hitler being an occultist, like you said, plugs directly into that. Hitler and Himmler, not just Hitler, right? Hitler, Himmler, uh, Rosenberg, Rudolf Hess, a lot of top Nazis were open occultists. Even I'm going to blank on his name today, but even some of the other guys who weren't necessarily open occultists in the Nazi Party were members of the Thule Society, which was occult, very occult by nature. So yeah, these guys were working out some sort of a prophecy in their own way, it seems. And another thing I want to comment on is, you made mention of them working with the Zionists. Well, I don't know if this will come up today, but I do think it's interesting that some of the more powerful, more rich Jews of the day were maybe not necessarily Jewish, because there were people like the Sabbateans and the Frankists, and then the Sabbatean Frankists, who was like, I don't know, like antichrist rabbi stuff, man, crazy stuff, like almost like Satanism, but with a lot of occultism in there. Those guys converted to Judaism, but still in the back rooms behind the closet, so to speak, maintain these Sabbatean occultist beliefs.
Oh yeah, I mean the Rothschilds,
There you go.
their name isn't even Rothschild. It was the Bowers, and they changed it to the Rothschilds, which actually means red shield.
Right.
And I think that's because the red shield protects the red cross of the Knights Templars,
Yeah.
which handled all the banking in the city of London before it was dismantled. And as you know now, the Rothschilds kind of handled that. So yeah, I think they're fronts for these pagan tribes that worship these fallen gods that hide behind all the Abrahamic faiths.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a guy on, and I got a lot of good feedback for the episode. It was Robbie Marks, and he was talking about, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he was talking about that connection between the red shield and the red cross of the Templars, which the Templars got that from the Anunnaki. They'll tell you that. Like, and you can even go back and look at old release of the Anunnaki, and you'll see the cross there. So, but I think he was bringing that up on the show, and he was connecting a lot of dots. I want to dive more into that red shield stuff, though. Personally, I think it might also have some Phoenician stuff going on, because Phoenicians were used the word red a lot. They were described as red, and there's just a lot of connections there. I'm sure we might get into this when we talk symbolism soon.
Yeah, I mean, just if you look at the, and we'll get into it, but if you look at the Rothschild coat of arms, there's a giant unicorn on it. And if you know anything about ancient Jewish stories, there is a king named King Og
Right.
that actually rode a unicorn during the flood. And according to the story, he hitched it up to Noah's Ark and he swam alongside it during the flood because there's no room for it. But even in the ancient past, these giants rode around on unicorns. So they put all this symbology in their coat of arms to tell you who they are and what gods they actually represent or worship.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I had this same discussion with Robbie Marks, about this. He was telling me about this whole King Og thing. I think there's different Jewish legends about this. One of them is that they tied a unicorn to the boat and Og was involved with that. And another is that Og got on top of the ark maybe and rode the ark through the 40. I guess, I mean, it's wild, but the Bible says they were in those days before and after. And how did they get back after, right? How did they sort of essentially survive the flood? So was Og on the boat? I don't know. On top of it, but yeah, the unicorn thing, that's very interesting. King Arthur, there's a lot of old pictures of King Arthur with his unicorn.
Really?
Yes, I could show you some later. There's some pictures of him like sort of grieve, like the unicorn is dying and like he's distressed and grieving over it. And then there's my broader point here is that that seems to be associated with bloodlines and Nephilim, right?
Well, and we'll get into this, but King Arthur, now he would have been an Anglo-Saxon king, right, in England. Well, they actually go back to the Germanic tribes, and they actually worship the god Woden, which is their equivalent of the Norse god Odin. And these Anglo-Saxon kings claimed that they take their bloodlines all the way back to these fallen gods, especially Odin in this case, or Woden. So it makes sense that you have Arthur riding a unicorn. I think that's pointed to the fact that he claims he's a king, through biblical tradition or
Yeah.
through their tradition.
Yeah. I got to point this out too, because we were talking about Hitler a minute ago.
Mhm.
There was a time where we can use the word worshipped too. This time where he seemingly worshipped Woden because he fought in World War One, and some of his poetry from World War One survived, and he was writing poems to Woden or Odin. And I just always found that interesting because I think Woden, if I remember correctly, means leader of the possessed. And I think that's very much what Hitler became. People got sort of possessed, if you will, with Nazism, and he was the leader of that. So I think he very much channeled Woden. But back to the unicorn, there was a really crazy story that came out recently in the news where a guy near Tintagel, which is an old castle ruins associated with King Arthur, a guy found a unicorn skull with his family. They were walking some nature trail, and there was like a mossy bank, and he saw what he said he thought was a root sticking out of the moss, and he went to pull it out, and a whole skull came out. And it's funny to see the progression of articles with this, because the first article you read is like, oh, this guy found a unicorn skull. The second article is like, well, hold on. We don't think, they start slowly, the media starts to like cancel it. Like, oh, nothing happened here. There's nothing to see here. But I think it's an interesting story because I think the guy really found one, and it's just perfect because it's right there at Tintagel, where you have the Arthurian legends of him having a unicorn. And sorry for the sidetrack on that, but I just think it's great.
Well, I would pay attention to that. It's probably like
Yeah.
what happened with Roswell. When all that
Right.
stuff first happened, the initial stories were like, no, this is a UFO. They came down here. And then all of a sudden, the CIA intelligence got in the middle of it. I don't know if CIA was even around back then, but maybe the OSS, got in, or maybe just the FBI got in the middle of it. And then they started changing the stories to make it just a weather balloon.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because one of the articles was talking about how he took it to a local museum, and they sort of laughed it off. And I'm like, of course they would. That's the last place you go if you find something. Don't go to the museum ever because their convoluted views of history are just going to ruin it. So, but yeah, I mean, I've got a book over here where they were finding unicorn Nephilim connected stuff over here in North America. This guy, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but there's an old account here of a Jesuit guy who came over to North America and founded, I think this was the 1800s, founded one of the cities out in Arizona, Tucson, I think it was. And I'm not going to be able to find it right now, but oh, here it is. This Jesuit he was a German friar named Father Bernard Middendorf, and he helped found Tucson, Arizona. Anyway, some Native Americans took him up to show him this hole in the rocks, like a room had been hollowed out in these rocks, and they went up there and like went in there and looked around, and it turned out to be this tomb. Now this is according to this, okay? This guy, because he wrote back to the headquarters, he told all the Jesuits back at headquarters about this, and he was like, yeah, there were giants in there. There's sarcophagus in there with giants, and in the sarcophagus we opened one, and there were little trinkets lining the edge of it, and one of them was a unicorn, right, laying right
What do
there
you know?
right there next to the giant. And there's other stories like that too, where it's like there's some sort of a connection with the Nephilim and with the unicorns.
Well, the Jesuits, and we'll get into this, they have a direct connection through their leader, through their founder, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and the Basque people directly to the Rapha from, post-flood in Deuteronomy 32, which is kind of weird when you think about it, but not really. So yeah, maybe we can get into some of the symbolism and what we see today as far as the intelligence agencies and these countries.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm gonna let you take it away. I'm not gonna.
Cool.
I don't want to like go down every little rabbit hole that like perks my ears up here because we're talking about a lot of really cool stuff. But yeah, whenever you want to dive into it, you can. And I think you have a presentation, right?
A little presentation, but maybe we could just first start with understanding that Jesus's kingdom is not of this world.
Let's do it.
Satan's kingdom currently is of this world. There's a passage in the Bible when Satan takes Jesus up to this mountain and he offers him any kingdom in the world. And he couldn't, only for you to bow a knee. And of course, Jesus doesn't bow a knee, but he couldn't offer him any of those kingdoms unless they were his to give. And biblically speaking, I believe they are his kingdoms until Jesus comes back a second time. So when you're looking at geopolitics, there's no good country versus bad country or Christian country versus non-Christian country. These are all controlled by these bloodlines that go back to Deuteronomy 32 that serve their specific gods, their powers or principalities ruling over each region. Think of it like a mafia. But at the very top, the mob boss, I think, is Satan. And these bloodlines, they use intelligence services to carry out their bidding, basically doing the manual labor to make all this stuff happen. And it's important to understand that these intelligence services, despite what they tell us, there's really no difference between any of them. They all serve these ancient bloodlines and not the people of the countries that, they claim to represent. And I think that you find it in all of their coat of arms, their symbology, whether you're looking at intelligence services or even coat of arms of royal families out of Europe, you'll see all this pagan symbology, which is odd when you think that they're actually the rulers of these quote unquote Christian countries. So I was hoping maybe we could do a PowerPoint real quick and we'll take a look at them. And I think you'll enjoy this too, because you'll kind of look at this symbology that you're familiar with and you're like, oh, I see it. I see it. Yeah, that's kind of weird for, claiming to be a Christian country.
Mm-hmm.
So let me pull this up real quick.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'll just add the whole thing I was talking about earlier with the Sabbatean Frankists converting to Judaism, but still privately maintaining occult beliefs. That happened with Catholicism too. Some of these people actually didn't just convert to Judaism, they converted to Catholicism as well. And that's why you hear people, I think, say, oh yeah, there's a secret faction within the Vatican today of occultists. It goes back to these same groups. So I think I think there's a lot of deception. I think even, maybe even in this country, we see a lot of people who claim to be Protestant in politics who aren't very religious people at all and don't seem to have any concern for God or the ways of God.
Oh, I agree. I call it word magic. They tell you what you need to hear. So you go, you become under their spell and you don't actually look at what they're actually doing. And when you actually look at what they're doing, you're like, wait a minute, this person's not a Christian.
Yeah. Manly P. Hall called it Egyptian priestcraft. This is what the priests would use religion like the opiate of the masses sort of thing, but they weren't really religious behind closed doors.
Yeah. Well, can you see what's on the screen right here?
Yes, sir. Sure can.
So,
Looking forward to this.
Yeah, so here we have MI6, and we're going to go over the first three, which I call the unholy trinity of intelligence services. MI6, the CIA, and Mossad. And truthfully, at the upper levels, there is no difference between the three of them. In fact, they often overlap constantly within each one of these organizations. But the first one I wanted to talk about was MI6. And if you look at the logo on the left, what do you see? You see a lion cherub of some kind next to a unicorn. And we already went into that story of Og and the giants running. how the giants rode these unicorns. Well, this is interesting. When you start looking into the history of MI6, it was actually created under King Edward VII, who was the king of the United Kingdom, the British Dominions, and the Emperor of India. He was actually a part of the House of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha, which goes back to the House of Wettin, which is a Germanic tribe. Its dynasties include Saxon kings, prince-electors, dukes, counts that once ruled the territories in present-day German federated states of Saxonia, Saxonia-Anhalt, and Thuringia. The dynasty is one of the oldest in Europe, and its origins are traced back to Wettin. Now, as we talked about before, these Anglo-Saxon kings actually believed they took their genealogy back to the fallen god Woden or Odin. So once again, you have the cherubim, which kind of represents this fallen god, or depending how you look at it, there's definitely loyal cherubim. But I think in this case, they're representing a fallen god. You have this unicorn that the giants used to ride. I think it's pointing to that they believe that they are actually the descendants of these gods. And, the giant was the main, what's called course of transportation. But what's interesting too, when you look into the first leader of MI6, his name was Sir Mansfield George Cumming, and he served as the first chief of MI6. And when you look into this, it says he was the great-grandson of the prominent merchant John Smith, director of both the South Sea Company and the East India Trading Company. The second son of Abel Smith, the Nottingham banker who founded the banking dynasty, whose businesses much later became National Westminster Bank, one of the largest banks in the United Kingdom. And their coat of arms is that one right there with the 3 griffins on it.
The
and
yellow.
If you start, what?
The yellow shield here?
The yellow shield with the 3 griffins. Now, griffins are mythical creatures, and it goes back to Scythian mythology.
Yeah. And
they believed to be the guardians of the Scythian treasure. Griffins were known for guarding immense deposits of gold, often mountains of Scythia. And if you look into Scythian lore, they too believed that they were a direct descendant of these gods. So it's weird you have this relationship between the gold protectors, right, and the actual royal family when they created and ran MI6.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe we said this. I don't know if we spelled it out, but I just want to say, because I love this picture of Og riding the unicorn, right? I've never seen this. He was definitely a Nephilim. I don't know if we spelled that out earlier, but Og of Bashan mentioned in the Old Testament, definitely Nephilim.
Oh, he was a giant. How big was his bed again? How many cubits?
Oh, is it like 9?
Yeah, it was very big.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, this is really cool. I've not really looked into this connection between intelligence and the bloodlines and the symbolism. This is pretty cool, man.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. And we have the CIA. Now, I fully understand that if you're paying attention to, geopolitical or domestic politics today, and you look at the CIA, that Mossad definitely has an influence within our institutions. But we also credit a lot of the control back to the Jesuits, right? You have Georgetown University that's just a feeder of people into the CIA. And let's just take a look at their emblem, right? So you have an eagle, and right below it, you have a 6-pointed star, which is actually called the Star of Virginia. It's an ancient symbol, also known as the Macedonian sun. It is the royal symbol of the ancient kingdom of Macedonia, notably associated with King Philip II and Alexander the Great. Now, this is the interesting part. That 6-pointed star actually has a meaning, and that represents the 6 rays are often interpreted to represent the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and the 12 gods of Olympus. And then you also have that eagle in their emblem, which you'll find all over flags, all over crests, all over the world. And I think that's paying homage to the Roman Empire that, according to Daniel, is what we currently live in. You see that in Mexico. You see that the Holy Roman Empire all throughout Europe, after Rome fell, it was a double-headed eagle. I think that's paying homage to Rome. Now let's get into a little bit about the Jesuits, and this is a really interesting one. So we have Saint Ignatius of Loyola. He was a Basque nobleman from northern Spain, born in 1491. He was a soldier who became a Catholic saint and the founder of the Society of Jesus after a serious injury during battle in Pamplona. While recovering, he read religious books, led to a profound spiritual conversion and the creation of his famous spiritual exercises. Now, I believe that as much as I believe, Apple was invented in a garage.
Right. So this
Right.
is this the guy in the black and white picture?
Yeah, he's the one below that. And to the left, you see the Jesuits,
Mm-hmm.
their symbol. What do you have around there? A sun, right? Alluding to the sun worship. And if you look at that Pope, St. Benedict, and he's wearing that giant fish head, do you notice something on there? Well, what many will believe is the Star of David on there. But if you come to do a little bit of research, there's actually no Star of David in the actual Bible. And a lot of people think that's the Star of Remphan, right? So you have this overlapping of these institutions that claim to represent the truth within biblical scripture.
Yeah, there's moments in history where if you go back far enough, you see that star. Sometimes it's represented right alongside a swastika.
Yeah.
Of course, this was way before Hitler and the Third Reich. But these are both very ancient symbols, and it's hard to say how far back they go. They might go back to Chaldea. They might go back to the Indo or what are they? The Magi,
Yeah.
the Iranian Magi. So who knows, man? These may not have been. Well, I'll just let you finish your thing, but yeah, that may have come to represent the Star of David later. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah. At least that's what they say it represents. And I think these symbols have power, whether they tell us the truth about them or not. I think they're magic symbols and they're all performing magic tricks. But what's really interesting about the Jesuits, right? So St. Ignatius of Loyola is from the Basque region. Now, a little bit about the Basque region. The Basque region is called an autonomous community in northern Spain, which means it has its own parliament, government, police force, health service, education system, and it raises and spends its own taxes, paying Spain for certainly providing services like defense and diplomacy. The autonomous region consists of 3 provinces, Alba, Gipuzkoa, and Biscay. Now, there is also a lot of Rh negative blood within this region, way higher than any other region on Earth. And you can look this all up. And what's really interesting about the Basque language is that it's called a language isolate, right? So there's no comparison to any other language anywhere else in the world, which has had scholars, throughout history trying to determine where are these Basque people from, right? They don't share any of the common traits of the language. Their genetics are different with such high, Rh negative blood. And there's actually been a lot of ideas of where it came from. Now, theologians in the 18th and 19th century made the claim that the Basque language was the original language spoken before the Tower of Babel. All right, that's what they thought because it was so different. Now, this is the real interesting thing. You see that thing with 2 cavemen right there?
Yeah,
That flag with 2 cavemen right there?
Yep.
So remember I told you there was a region called Gipuzkoa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know what that means? That word actually means those who language was broken. What happened at the Tower of Babel in Deuteronomy 32?
Okay, I like it.
Right? So is it a coincidence that there's 2 giants on there on top of with a royal crown on top of it? I don't think so.
And now this is possibly Basque, right?
Yeah, the Basque region.
Okay, and this symbol you're talking about, what does it represent today?
This symbol of that?
Yes.
So that's that region I told you about, Gipuzkoa.
Okay.
That's literally what their flag is.
Is that in the Pyrenees?
That's in northern Spain.
Okay.
So it's its own autonomous region. And think how powerful you have to be to have literally your own region where you don't follow any of the country's rules. All you do is pay a tax to them and they protect you.
Right.
And that's pretty nuts. But
Mhm.
that's where the Jesuits were, birthed out of. So I don't think, once again, that that's a coincidence that you find these descendants of the Nephilim, or in this case, I guess you say Raphaim, post-flood giants, kind of get in the middle of the institutions of control when it comes to religion.
Now, is it your position that maybe the reason why their their blood is and their blood marker is so hard to pin down does that go back to the Genesis 6 event for you?
Yeah, I believe so, because the one thing I did research is that really high levels of RH and I believe O blood. And I know Gary Wayne has gotten into it that, there's something weird about that RH negative blood that's not like any other human blood. So I think when you combine that with, one of their regions is actually means whose language was broken, right? I think that these, Basque people were probably from one of the tribes from the Table of Nations that was before, they created the Tower of Babel and God destroyed it.
Mm. Wow, man. Yeah, this is full of stuff. I want to ask you, in the picture of the Pope, or maybe not the Pope, but the Catholic guy here, the priest, with his hat, it's that Star of David. But what's the little thing in the middle? What is that, Saturn or what? What's the little planet-looking circle in the middle
Oh, that
of that
green thing?
of the star in the middle of the
Oh,
star on the fish on the Dagon hat?
shoot, I don't know, but maybe it is, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it
haven't.
might represent a planet. That's what they used to call the gods, right?
Yeah, I just looked up the Star of David, and like one of the Kabbalistic uh meanings for it is it's got six, where's this at here? Six stars or 6 points because of the days of the week, and then the center circle represents the Sabbath,
Mm,
or maybe for some the Saturn, you know.
yeah.
So I was thinking about that, but did you talk about this yet? The significance of that hat, the Pope hat with Dagon?
No, I have not. Do you want to get into that?
Well, I was just if you go back and look at the legends of Dagon, which was I believe, a Phoenician legend out of maybe Tyre or Sidon. I don't know. It came out of the Mediterranean. And Dagon came out of the sea after a deluge and helped reteach man things that he would need because everything was wiped out and a lot of the knowledge was wiped out. So, according to the myth, Dagon comes out to help teach man. It's a very similar myth that you see with Oannes as well, and also in South America with what would they call him? It wasn't Quetzalcoatl, was it? There was the man with the beard who came out of uh, Titicaca, I believe. I don't remember what they called him, but similar mythologies across the world talk about these fish entities, like hybrids, humanoids, I guess, that come out of the water and teach men knowledge. And one of those was Dagon. And if you look at old reliefs of Dagon, he looks a lot like this, like what the Catholics wear.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you one thing. So I think that these Jesuits are going to be the spear tip to usher in this mystery Babylon religion. And especially when you think that they're possibly Basque, right, who take their genealogy back to these giants, you take a look and you can Google this, just type in Pope Francis, green alien. And he's actually wearing clothes, right? And on it, there is an image of a green alien that looks just like the Nazca lines in Peru.
Yeah, very same
Same
reason.
thing, right?
Yeah, because it's like you've got that area of Peru where you've got the Nazca lines, and then further inland into the mountains is Lake Titicaca, where you have the legend I just talked about. So yeah, man, this stuff all just kind of connects, doesn't it?
Oh, it's wild when you think about it.
Yeah, I've seen that too. They have the Catholics have a robe, and it's got one of the alien looking guys from the Nazca lines on it. It's wild.
Yeah, and you got to ask yourself, if this man is a man of Jesus from the society of Jesus, why is he wearing clothes with fallen gods on it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know?
Right.
It's super weird. So I think we kind of handled the CIA, and definitely Mossad has, influence within it 100%. And that's why I said, like, one thing about the mainstream alternative media or the mainstream media, they view or they try to teach you geopolitics as like country versus country. One's good, one's bad, intelligence versus intelligence, when all actuality, I think it's all a network. And there's really no difference between those three or any intelligence network that represents these bloodlines within these countries. And we'll soon find that out with a couple more slides.
Awesome, man.
So the next one we have here is
Oh.
Mossad.
Before you get into that, just because I might hear about this in the comment, I'm just going to correct something I said. Viracocha, it wasn't Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is like a dragon bird type of thing. I might get raked over the coals for saying that too improperly, but Viracocha is the legend, like Dagon, like Oannes, where this guy with a beard, like a fish guy, comes out of the lake and teaches people knowledge. So I just wanted to sorry to you up there, but yeah,
Awesome.
let's go.
And one more thing about the Jesuits, this is really interesting too. Did you know that gentil is a Basque word which actually means race of giants from Basque mythology? Gentil, which is where they get the word Gentile from. So when it talks about Jew and Gentile, especially in the Old Testament, perspective, they're really talking about humans and descendants of giants. And that word actually comes from the Basque region.
Wow. And like the gentle giant from some of the fairy tales.
There you go.
Yeah, man, that Basque region is something else. I think some of those people settled in the Pyrenees as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing, there's actually, this is really interesting to you, what I looked up, is some attributed the gentil. Oh, here we go. Forget that. We'll go on to the next one.
Okay.
So here we have Mossad, everybody's favorite topic to talk about, especially today. If you're into conspiracies and things of that nature. Maybe I can start off by reading a little bit from Ezekiel 38 and 39. And as you can see, I put up part of the table of nations of the bloodline of Japheth, right? So he goes, "Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the prince Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks into your jaws, and lead you out, with all your army, horses, and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, a great company of bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, these are all bloodlines, are with them. All of them with shield and the helmet. Gomer and all his troops," right? So if you look at Japheth, you will see that one of his sons was Gomer. His three sons, one of them was named Ashkenaz, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with the term Ashkenazi Jew, right? That might actually tie, at least the bloodline aspect of it, might tie into the Sabbatine Frankists that you're talking about.
And I also think that I'm glad we're talking about this bloodline of Japheth, because this also ties in a lot of the stuff that we've talked about already with like the Tower of Babel, even because you look at Noah has Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right?
Mhm.
So, and I think it was Ham that had Cush, who had Nimrod. So all this post-flood stuff that we're talking about today goes back to these three guys, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All of it, right? And all those bloodlines that I mentioned to you, like 2 or 3 of them are all from this Japheth bloodline. You got Gomer, you have Tubal, Meshech, Magog, right? And they all immigrated or migrated, after Deuteronomy up into the Black Sea region, right? Near Ukraine and things of that nature. Now, biblical scholars have equated the Ashkenaz tribe with the actual Scythian people, a warlike nomadic people who lived north of the Black Sea and are mentioned in the Assyrian texts of Ashguse and Ashkuze, right? Those are the Assyrian words for Ashkenaz, which is why they think that the Scythians are actually the Ashkenaz. And within Scythian mythology, you have a complex system of beliefs centered around the pantheon of gods, shamanic practices, and reverence for nature, particularly animals. Key myths include the creation story involving Tartaros, the son of Zeus, and the snake-legged goddess, which explains the origins of the royal Scythian lineage. So the Scythians' mythology is known for its artistic motifs, with often depicted as mythical creatures like griffins, dragons, alongside animals sacred to them, such as deer. So remember what we saw earlier in that slide of the first leader of MI6. He literally had these griffins, which were these Scythian mythical animals. And if you take a look at Benjamin Netanyahu, where's he claimed to descend from? Poland, right? Up near that Black Sea area. And who knows at one point. And if you look at the migration habits of the Jews up into that region, in the first century, the earliest Jewish presence is recorded there, with the Hellenized Jews migrating from Asia Minor to cities like Panticapaeum, Panorgia, I can't even pronounce these. And then in the 5th century, the Byzantine Jews settled there in the region. In the 8th and 11th century, the Khazar Empire, where the ruling class adopted Judaism and was located in that area. In the 13th and 18th centuries, Jewish and Karaite communities existed in the region. And in the 15th century and onward, Jewish merchants began using trade routes to the Black Sea. Now, at some point, there was a bunch of Jews that went up there all throughout history. And they might have intermarried with them, adopted their gods, and then at some point moved back to Israel. And I think that these are the bloodlines that control Mossad today. And like I said, right there, you have the Rothschild coat of arms. What do you see? You see that eagle on it from the Holy Roman Empire. You see that unicorn on that, paying homage to these, unicorns at the Giants Road. And you too see one of these, what's it called? Lion cherubs. Now, what's really interesting about this too, especially in the coat of arms throughout Europe of the royal families, if you look at the Rothschild one, you'll always see feathers on it. And they always come in feathers of 3, either on top or 3 on each side. Well, you know it also has 3 feathers on each side? Seraphim angels when you read the Old Testament. If you read Isaiah 6:8, when Isaiah was taken up to the throne room and he sees a giant seraphim, what does it have? 6 wings, 3 on each side. And you find that within all these coat of arms that we see all throughout Europe as well.
Ishtar is shown with 3, they're not wings, but or feathers. They're 3 prongs on each shoulder.
There you go.
Some scholars have suggested that was some sort of a weapon, like a sword she could draw or something like that. But either way, it's 3 prongs on each shoulder. I just think that's an interesting tie-in. And with that Rothschild shield, do you still have that available to pull up? Or
Yeah, it's right there on it.
Oh, that's the one in the bottom right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Where's the unicorn? Oh, I see it. It's over here. It's right here on the right.
Right there on the right. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a
lion cherub
and a unicorn.
And then on top of that, you have a single eagle paying homage to the Holy Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm. And like you said before, Rothschild means red shield. And I think I mentioned before, I think there might be some symbolism there going back to the Phoenicians as well in the word phoenix. And you see a phoenix on here.
Yeah.
I guess that's that top left of the shield part is a phoenix, A lot of this stuff goes back to the Phoenicians. I mean, in my research as well, like even Europe, the princess goddess Europa is what Europe is named after, and that's Phoenician, right?
Oh, wow.
And the Phoenicians, they also settled Spain. They settled Cadiz, Spain, and some of the other ports there. So I could totally see that there's some interconnections here, even with the Scythians. And the red shield is also, I've been told, associated with the red dragon. And there, I see a red dragon there in that, what I think is a red dragon, possibly in the Rothschild shield as well.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Once we get into one of these Italian families, you will see a red serpent. And this family that we'll get into in a few slides might be the most evil family on earth if we just go off their coat of arms.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Awesome, man.
So here we have Iran, right? And this is their logo for their intelligence service, which is odd because they're quote unquote a Muslim country and have been a Muslim country. But what do we see on it? there's an 8-sided star, which is the Ishtar star,
Mm-hmm.
with an all-seeing eye literally in the middle of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is the eye of Horus. You see that right there?
Yep.
The eye of Horus, the 6-sided star. And the bloodlines that actually settled where Iran is, or Persia, were the sons of Ham, Mizoram, and Cush, who settled in near Egypt and there. Well, that was Egypt, my bad. It was, oh, here we go. They were the sons of Shem, Elam, the Elamites that settled in Iran or Persia. So once again, I just have to ask the question, if you were a Muslim country, why do you have the all-seeing eye and an 8-sided star of Ishtar as your logo?
Right. Yeah.
Next one.
It reminds me a little bit of the Hamza.
What's the Hamza?
Eye of Hamza, or it's also called the Eye of Fatima. It's Muhammad's daughter was Fatima, right? But he named her after a pre-Islamic Meccan god or goddess, Fatima. So, you could, what you're seeing with that probably is Isis Ishtar ties. So there's that eye is also associated with Ishtar. So that makes sense that it's in the 8-pointed star. Yeah.
And if you look at their building, right, if you look below that, you see their building where all the politics goes on. Did you know that's a pyramid, and on it has 33 windows on it?
And they're obsessed with that 33.
Yeah, right. The 33rd level of Freemasonry, which they take Yorkshire Freemasonry that has 3 levels and they just multiply it by 11, which is another sacred number.
This is for another time. I'm not going to go into this right now, but I do want to tell you, I have a working theory that some of that goes back to Jeremiah 33.
What happens in that?
Well, it's loosely referencing New Jerusalem. And I've seen a lot of Freemasons, Templars, and initiates who like to use that term New Jerusalem for their side projects or their coup d'etats of nations, if you will. So I think some of this 33 stuff may have been jacked from the Bible.
Oh, for sure. Because I always wonder about that, because Jesus died when he was 33. And I wonder if they took that, inverted it, and then made it their own.
Right.
I also think that it might also be connected to the 1/3 of all angels that fell down to heavens in Revelations. You have that 33 right there, the 33% of the angels that fell. It could be homage to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Now, once again, I guess with Egypt, you'd think a Muslim country, but what do you have on there? You literally have the all-seeing eye of Horus. You have one of the lightning bolts of Zeus. You have this eagle, which is, I think, once again, paying homage to Rome, that's pulling a serpent. And this is where Cush and Mizoram, son of Ham, actually settled. So once again, I do find it odd that in a Muslim country, you have all this pagan symbology all over these intelligence services, which these bloodlines that settled there would have worshipped.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the line of Nimrod. Nimrod would be born from the line of Ham and
Yeah.
Cush. And Cush came down into Ethiopia and settled there. And these guys had already, it was a full departure from the beliefs of their righteous father, Noah. These guys went as rebellious as possible. And they were talking to the old gods, the little G gods. They were getting all their advice from them. So by the time Cush migrates up into Egypt, they've got this pantheon of gods already established. So those gods go on to become the gods of Egypt.
Oh, interesting. I believe it to be true.
And they also, the line of Cush built a lot of those pyramids too.
So Nimrod is the one who became a mighty man,
Yeah.
or a Gibborim. I wonder how he did that.
Well, yeah. Right. I wonder how. Well, I think that they were in communication with otherworldly entities. I really do. I think that's what all the rites and rituals
and practice that they did was about, man.
Yeah. But what's also interesting, it's not just the Middle East, it's not just Europe. You see this in Asia as well. And right here is the intelligence service sign for Korea, or South Korea specifically. And once again, you have this 8-pointed star. And in Chinese mythology, the 8-pointed star symbolizes the universe and the celestial palace of the sky emperor, Tei, who rules the 8 divisions of heaven from the center. Well, we know that's not Yahweh. So once again, that's a direct symbol of one of these fallen gods that the ancient Chinese people used to worship. And if you look in the center of that, right, inside that star, what you have is a yin and yang sign. Now, that yin and yang side is homage to the primordial egg. And in the Taoism creation story, there was this egg in the universe, and it exploded, and all the energies, both good and bad, just exploded out of there. And then this horn god Pengu, which you see on the lower left right here, with horns holding that egg, separated all the energies, the good and bad ones. And that's where you get this idea from duality, which is huge in the occult, right?
Right.
Down to the black and white, what's it called? Checkered symbol that you see in Masonic lodges all over the place. But here you have South Korea doing the same type of thing with their symbols. But this is less hiding it, because this is who they actually worship.
Yeah, that's an 8-pointed star as well. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's 8-point star. So that's also a star of Ishtar.
Right.
But within Chinese mythology, that's a sky emperor star. His name is Tai Yi. And, there's probably Ishtar, or some, variation of Ishtar that traveled over to that area once they all, scattered from Deuteronomy 32.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's look at, this one's awesome. Like, this is Pakistan, and they literally have the goat Amendes on it.
Wow.
Or the Baphomet right on their logo.
Wow.
With that crescent moon, which goes all the way back to the Anunnaki and all that type of stuff, that's located right there. And I put a little image of one of the carvings back then, and there's literally a crescent moon that's located on a staff of some kind.
Yeah, so this one also features a 5-pointed star. That's also goddess. That's Venus. The 5-pointed star represents Venus, which is also Ishtar. So it's kind of confusing. It's like, why does she have an 8-pointed star and a 5-pointed star? Well, the 5-pointed star is the path Venus makes in the night sky over a course of, I think, 8 years. So, and then you've got the crescent moon, which is also symbolic of Hallel, the Meccan moon god. This goes back to those pre-Islamic gods like Fatima. This has all been sort of wiped out of the history books in many ways. Like it's hard to find stuff on this. So, but it's all old, Middle Eastern pagan goddess worship and god worship.
Oh, yeah. What do we have next? Oh, this is what I'm talking about. This is what's this guy's name? I have it down here. This is the House of Borromeo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have a whole bunch of stuff on this. So they were the House of Borromeo, an Italian noble family. They started as merchants in San Matteo in the 1300s and became bankers in Milan after the 1370s. Their descendants played important roles in politics of the Duchy of Milan and as cardinals in the Catholic Reformation. In 1916, the head of the family was granted the title of Prince of Angria by the King of Italy. So this is one of the more blue-collar lines that actually married into the House of royal lines, like the House of Bourbon and things of that nature. But if you look at this coat of arms, the one thing you'll see in the upper left, and I wish I could pull into that closer. I don't know, maybe I can. But what you see, I don't know if I can. It's literally a blue serpent eating a child or about to devour a child. You also have a unicorn on there as well. On the very bottom of that, you literally have black angel wings. And I don't know what, black angel wings mean, anything other than, these fallen gods.
Mm-hmm.
On the upper left right here, It appears you have some type of cherubim baby with wings that's located on some type of pillar.
That's a caduceus as well.
A caduceus?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, you got the unicorn, you have the serpent down there that's eating the child. You have the black angel wings. You have the eagle that represents the Holy Roman Empire. And you have all these feathers up here. You have the, what you call it, Edusius?
Caduceus.
Caduceus?
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's not a traditional caduceus, but it's got that symbology integrated into it for sure.
Interesting. You also have that serpent thing right here that's on the Italian car. What's the Italian car company that's really big? Not one of the big ones, but I mean, not one of the fancy ones like Ferrari or Lamborghini, but there's some Italian car company that literally has that same type of serpent on their logo.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alfa Romeo or something like that.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. But yeah, this is an Italian one. And then I guess one more thing we can look at, and then I'll pull this down. Iceland. What I find interesting is this double-headed eagle of the Holy Roman Empire. Because if you read the book For Ezra, have you ever heard of that book For Ezra? The extra canonical book?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So there is actually a vision that Ezra has in that book. And in this vision, he sees this giant eagle with 3 heads and like 8 different feathers. And then all of a sudden, this lion-type creature comes out and rebukes it on behalf of the Most High. Like he says, the Most High sees what you're doing. You're not going to get away with this, so on and so forth. And then after the vision, Ezra asks God to interpret the vision. And he says, as for that 3-headed eagle, that is the final empire to rule over the earth, similar to what I told you. I believe it's his cousin Daniel, but different. And as for the lion, that is the Messiah who I've saved for the end of days. So I do find it interesting that that book said the 3-headed eagle, it represents the final empire. And you have the Holy Roman Empire after the fall of Rome that adopted the double-headed eagle. And then the nation states of Rome, like America or, Mexico, they have the single-headed eagle. So I think that eagle is all a representation of the Roman Empire that currently rules us today.
And there's a fleur-de-lis at the bottom of the triple-headed eagle.
One of these things?
Yeah.
What is that again? I know that has to do with like
A fleur-de-lis.
New Orleans. And
Yeah, they use it in New Orleans today, but it goes back further than that. I think the French brought it over, but I don't know. I've heard some people talk about it before. I should do a deep dive into that. There's a lot of symbology to the fleur-de-lis, a lot to it.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to Bloodlines.
Oh, without a doubt. And let me tell you something. Can I tell you a real crazy story?
Yeah.
And why I believe in the spiritual realm so much? And, I don't promote any of this stuff. In my former life, I used to be a huge atheist. I was living wrong. I had my battles with drugs and alcohol. And thanks to God's grace, he helped me with all those things about 4 or 5 years ago. And I finally humbled myself and started praying to God and asking for help. However, about 20 years ago, and this is before I ever read the Bible, like I was very materialistic in my thinking. I didn't believe in God. My buddy goes, hey, you want to try DMT? And I was like, all right, why not? Let's try it. I heard you could see aliens or something. And I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into also. I didn't really understand what DMT, and I don't promote this to anybody, but I did it. And I just want to tell my story about what I saw. So I take this stuff and it lasts for about 3 minutes. And I kid you not, a lion with glowing green eyes and wings, pretty much what you see behind me, came into this dimension. And before I got a word out, this trance comes over me and I start speaking in tongues to this thing, even to the point where my brain was kind of thinking about something else and I was trying to formulate different words, but the only thing that came out were these tongues. And it goes on back and forth for about 3 minutes. I still don't know what he said back at me, but it ends. All my friends were laughing at me. And then I was like, well, I still think aliens are these green things that the movies tell me about. But then, fast forward 15 years later, And I started reading the Bible. And when you start reading what these biblical description of Elohim actually look like, right? Angel's just a title of what they do. It means messenger of the Lord. One of the specific creatures that they talk about are lion cherubs. And they looked exactly what I saw. So I was like, holy crap, there's something to this book. I got to start reading it. And then after I read it, it was a wrap. I'm like, it all makes sense. All the conspiracies make sense. But I've seen the spiritual realm, and these creatures actually exist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I've talked about this on here before, but I've had similar stories told to me by people who took DMT and that they were talking to ancient entities. And uh, one of the stories I got, this entity gave this kid his name or its name, maybe even her name, because I think in the DMT trip, she was constantly presenting herself as a her to him, it was like a real tall entity. And he told me the name of the entity, and it's a name from mythology. It's from Frisian mythology, and he didn't know that. Like I told him that. I'm like, I recognize this name from studying and research. And like we went back and looked it up, and yeah, it was a goddess to these people. And that's who I've been talking to on my DMT
It makes
trips.
sense.
Yeah. I just I mean, and I hear people talk. I overheard a conversation once between these two guys talking about how stupid it was that in their mind they thought it was stupid that people thought the DMT elves and the DMT entities were real. And I think the guy was saying, like, it was his point of view that it was an archetype, like a construct, like a mental construct. And I just don't think that that's what's happening.
Well,
I think,
I hear that all the time, but the thing is, I had never read the Bible. I had
mm,
never looked into Egyptian mythology or Greek mythology or what the gods really look like. I thought aliens were these green things. And also, what you're doing when you take that stuff is you're simulating a near death experience because as you're dying as a human, something happens in our brain and a DMT bomb just explodes. And if you listen to people's near death experiences, right, when their hearts stop for 10 or 20 minutes and their spirits cross on over, or the veil starts to thin, or you even hear stories of people in hospice being visited by these entities as their final days are starting to go. No, this is a real spiritual realm. And I almost wonder if the DMT that our brain produces naturally is how we perceive the reality that we're in. And when you start putting more DMT in it, whether it's natural as you're dying or artificial, like I did myself, I wonder if it opens your ability to see past this dimension into a spiritual realm where, like I said, I think there's a host of these, fallen gods, demonic offspring, maybe good gods. Maybe that's where they're doing battle, right? Because I think we all have these angels that are around us that are protecting us. Maybe they're doing battle in this spiritual realm. And the reason why I don't promote it to anybody is one, you shouldn't take mind altering stuff anymore. But you don't know what you're tapping into when you open up this realm. You don't know what entities are attaching to you. And I think when you start messing with this stuff, it can cause a lot of havoc in your life.
yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that you thought that the Tower of Babel was a portal. I also hold to that belief as well. I've even heard it suggested that maybe they were trying to get back into the Garden of Eden by doing that,
So
which
do you think that I often thought about this? Do you think that Garden of Eden is maybe an intersection on Earth in another realm where the heavens meets up with this earthly realm, maybe?
yeah, I think so. I think it's some sort of an in-between realm and that it's invisible to us now because it was cloaked or something, and that there's uh, good seraphim or cherubim guarding it. I think
Hmm.
the Bible makes mention of that, and that there's a tree of life there. And that was possibly what Nimrod was trying to get hold of, because if he was to break back into the garden, that and get in touch with or get in sync with the tree of life, that would be immortality. And maybe that's what it represented. Maybe they were on it. The Tower of Babel was not only a portal, but a quest for immortality to these people. Um,
because these people were closer to, I was going to say source, but I hate using that. These people were closer to the garden. They were closer to the first man. These things that we're talking about right now that sound taboo were not a taboo to them. It was just like, yeah, they knew, yeah, there was a Garden of Eden. There was all this supernatural stuff there. Adam told us about it. Cain told us about it. Like the legends were a lot more potent then. And I think they just knew that was a real realm and that they had, I also think they had spiritual technologies and they knew how to sort of maybe get in there because that's what God says. God says that they had figured something out. That's what he's alluding to. Whatever they put their minds to do, they're going to be able to do. Like essentially, it sounds like they figured it out.
Yeah, I'm with you about it being this intersection between the heavens and earth somewhere, because
Yeah.
I think there's a reason why no one's found it yet, but it clearly exists.
Yeah.
And maybe we just can't perceive it, through our earthly eyes, right?
And maybe it's not meant for us to be there or to
I don't
be
think so.
going or to be knocking at the door. Maybe that's for another time, another place, that sort of thing. And I like that we touched on some of these core groups of people that I think are very important, man. I want to do more on the Scythians. You've definitely lit that fire for me today. I think it goes back to this lineage of Noah. I think you could go back to Shem, Ham, and Japheth and see a lot. You can see where he has Ham has Cush, Cush has a guy named Canaan. That's the Canaanites. That's the
Yep.
Phoenicians. I'm big on the Phoenicians.
Oh,
But I love going back. Like I love that we were able to sort of taproot that today and go back to that lineage and check that out, because I think history teachers today are sleeping on the Scythians or the Scythians, however people want to pronounce it, and the Phoenicians and groups like that. I mean, we got our alphabet from the Phoenicians. Like I said, they have that goddess Europa, goddess / princess of Tyre. Europa.
so you're saying that all of Europe was named after a Phoenician goddess?
Absolutely. And she was known to ride Zeus the bull in some of her iconography. A lot of scholars say that she was also a start day. Surprise, surprise, right? So there's Ishtar ties to that as well, of course, right? So yeah, Europe is named after a princess of Tyre goddess Europa.
And it's interesting you say that. It reminds me of that movie, and I think it's propaganda too, so I'm not like supporting it. But that movie Europa that all the Hitler dick writers like to watch and see. Hey,
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
but that's Tyler Europa
Yes,
too.
man. I've had people. Oh, Tim, I've had people in the comments like you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. I'm like, really? Do you know my take on this whole Hitler? I've been on several podcasts talking about this. I think that they were occultists.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't.
That's a lot.
I don't think they were the good guys. Come on, isn't that like what's assessed in that Europa film that they were like?
They were the good guys.
Yeah. God, get out of here.
And
dude.
it was really the horrible Zionists. And in reality, what we have to understand is they all work together. Like I said, go look at all the intelligence symbols. They all have, symbology that points back to these pagan gods. And they're specific pagan gods, which points back to Deuteronomy 32, when the nations were created. And each principality was responsible for a specific nation, except for one country, which was Israel. But at some point, God Most High left them as their physical ruler. Maybe that was in, Samuel, when the Israelites outright rejected him to be their God and chose Saul instead. Or should I say God chose Saul instead? Or maybe that was in 70 AD when the temple fell. But I think currently all these countries are controlled by these principalities, these powers, these worldly governors that are doing everything they can to manufacture or recreate, I shouldn't say recreate, but create the biblical end of days in hopes to free these fallen gods from the pit prison. I say that laughing, but I really do believe that. I know it sounds crazy.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? Revelation 9:11 would be a part of that, right?
What is Revelation 9:11?
I think, is that what? Maybe I got that scripture wrong. Let's see. I'll pull it up right now and I was thinking, man, maybe Revelation 9:11 kind of
fits into what you're just saying. Let's see if see if I'm getting rusty over here. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. Revelation 9:11.
There you go.
Damn. I love it when it works out.
Yeah.
I love it when it works out. The first woe has passed. There are still 2 woes to come. It goes on to say in verse 12. Verse 13, then the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. Talking about spirits bound in the earth. So the 4 angels were released who had been held ready for the hour, the day, the month, the year, to kill 1/3 of humankind.
Yeah, I think that's what the alien invasion is going to be.
Dude, I just got chills. Oof. That is heavy, heavy, heavy. Yeah, I mean, if there's an alien invasion, you know, I know people have been banging on that drum for about 20 plus years now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the deception, right?
Sure.
I think they've pushed this whole alien psyop so far,
Right.
that at some point something has to show up, right? Or people are just going to be like, shut up, because they're now discussing it in a public manner.
Right.
Where before, you know, if they're fake, you're crazy, don't believe in them. Now they're having congressional meetings. They got the videos from the little Air Force of the UFO. They're talking about it as it's just some threat to humanity. But I think the real truth is that there are these fallen gods that are coming back. You know, the gods of old, they're going to start ruling over us. And I think they're all going to be released from that pit prison. I think that's exactly what they're trying to do at CERN before God releases them out.
At this point, I think they might forego the alien invasion part, and it might be more a AI gateway CERN sort of a thing. And
so you think like a Project Bluebeam type deal?
Yeah, but instead of it being, you know, holograms in the sky and faking like the War of the Worlds, them coming to us like Independence Day style, I think it's going to be more of a bridge built between technology and portals that are opened by quantum and quantum computers, because that's what these guys who have the quantum computers are saying publicly at their talks, like Gordy Rose. He's got contracts with NASA, CIA, and CERN. They use his quantum computers. It's called Gordy Rose. What's the name of his company? Anyway, I'll remember it in a minute. But he's saying that they've made contact with entities, and he's not calling them aliens. He's not saying they have spaceships. He's saying they are an astral intelligence, to the likes that Steiner was talking about with the 8th spirit work. And he's like, he instead of likening them to aliens and like Spielberg stuff, he's saying no, they're like Lovecraftian. These are this is cosmicism. These are intelligences that don't care about it. They look at us like we're ants, and this is just an anthill. They don't care either way. They're in another dimension.
Yeah.
So that's what that's his perspective on what they tapped into. My point is they tapped into something using quantum. He said there's a chip in there in their black monolith computers. He said that too, like 2001 Space Odyssey style. He's like, yeah, they look like a black monolith, and there's a chip in there, and it pushes data into this other world, and we get answers back. Like,
well, it's probably
quantum Ouija board.
It was probably Abaddon going, "Hurry up, guys, and get me out of here."
Right. Well, and then you link this up with CERN, because you look at what Dr. Astrid Zuckelberger has talked about. She's University of Geneva, Dr. PhD. She knows all these scientists that work at CERN. And according to her, they said, yeah, there's what did they say? 17 dimensions. And in the bottom of CERN, where we do some of these experiments, we've time and again, we've opened up a portal. We've been able to do it, and something has come through. An astral intelligence, an entity has come through. So
she's saying what form?
She said it wasn't like a human form. I think is what she said. I'll have to go back and look. It left some sort of a garment, like a scarf.
Oh,
or
I saw
something.
I saw that video.
Yeah,
The actual physical being came through.
that's what I gathered from what she was saying. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I think the computers at this point and quantum, and there's a lot of Kabbalistic stuff going on with that too, is opening. This is it's technology merging with witchcraft, essentially. Some people probably thought I just sounded like a total nut job when I said that, but I think that that's kind of what's happening. Upper echelon people who are into the Kabbalah are using some of these old methods that go back to the Chaldeans and Babylon and Sumer and the Phoenicians and the Scythians, and they're using some of that magic behind the scenes. There's a case to be made that that's happening. So, but yeah, but I don't want to totally like poo poo the fake alien invasion. I mean, I guess it could still happen. And plus, I think that they were planning to do that. I mean, when you look at movies like Independence Day, there's a lot of pre-programming in that movie. Go back and watch that one. They're setting everybody up for something to pop up in the sky, whether
Yeah.
it's hologram or real. That was, you remember they showed the people like making signs. Like some of the people were,
Oh yeah.
some people left town, some people went to the top building tops, the tops of skyscrapers to hold signs say welcome to Earth and stuff like that. That movie was full of pre-programming. There was a lot of movies like that.
You know, what I thought about is with this alien psyop, whatever. I almost wonder if they're programming us to fight against God and Jesus and the loyal Elohim in the great battle of Armageddon. Because think about
Right.
what they're telling us. So, like, okay, there's these other aliens that are coming. They're going to cause us great harm, you know? And who comes down here, you know, in the end of Revelations to destroy the earth and put an end to Satan? It's God, Jesus, and the loyal angels. And I wonder if they're going to use the alien psyop to say, hey, we need to form a one world government to protect us from this quote unquote alien threat that they know damn well is going to be God and Jesus and the loyal angels. And I think they're going to deceive us possibly into forming a one world government, a one world army. They'll roll out all this advanced technology. And I think they might be trying to deceive us into fighting against God in the great battle of Armageddon. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like Revelation 9:11, man. You know, I just read it, of course, like it's got these seals being broken, aka maybe a curse being lifted or a gateway between our realm and another being broken. Somehow they're able to come through. And I've always thought about this. And if we're going to go with Hollywood examples, I guess I'll just go with the Ghostbusters one, with when the ghosts were released on New York City in that Ghostbusters movie. Like that's CERN in my mind. That's like the Ghostbusters headquarters in New York with the roof blasting out and like the stream of spirit shooting through. That's CERN.
Oh, without doubt.
Something like that may have already happened. We've got what's called Oak Ridge out here in Tennessee. They've got a particle collider. They're like a little mini CERN. And there's all kinds of wild stories coming out of East Tennessee about things coming through portals. So
Wasn't there a lot of cryptids in East Tennessee?
Yeah, the cryptid stuff is off the chain. I've had Travis Carpenter on. His dad, that was his dad's research area. His dad was like a real famous Bigfooter, and more. He was just more than that. Like he was a paranormal investigator, I think. And the activity out there was off the charts.
I don't think that's a coincidence that it's
No.
so close to that Hadron Collider. And by the way, they're building those things all over the world now. To your point, CERN is not the only one. It's the most popular one. But China's building them. We have them. You have them in Europe. So they're trying to open up these portals all over the world to let these demonic type entities kind of make their presence known here, which is kind of a wild thing to think about.
Yeah, there's a network. The particle colliders are connected, and there's a convergence of that network in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley.
That's wild. So all the particle colliders are somehow connected on the same type of I don't even know what you'd call it, but wavelength or whatever.
Right.
They're
Like
sharing data with each other.
right. There's a data farm that's ran through Silicon Valley and San Francisco. So
Don't trust those people.
right. So, but it just goes to show you that the tech world is closely related in working with CERN and the
Oh, without a doubt.
colliders. Yeah.
Isn't that where the internet came from?
Yeah, they released the internet first in 1989 out of CERN. A guy named Tim Berners-Lee, CERN scientist, first put up the internet. Like it had been developed, but he released it, made it public. And then I think a couple years later, Slack, another place with a particle collider out in San Francisco, I think is where it's at. They released the internet here in the US.
That's why.
So basically, yeah, you've got two places with particle colliders who released the internet in the first place.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Yeah, man. Yeah. Have you heard of? I want to maybe just circle back for a second to the symbolism stuff. Thanks for bringing all that out today, man. That's crazy. There's so much there. I mean,
Yeah.
these symbols are just symbols on symbols.
Yeah, and I'll let you go real quick, but if who's ever listening, if you want a fun afternoon, just go look up coat of arms.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We should have I should have brought up the Visconti family. Have you ever looked at theirs?
No, what's their thing?
It's so one of the last ones that you showed, it was like the crest that had all of this symbolism, like the 4th of July of symbolism.
Yeah.
You remember there was on one of the last crests you showed, there was a little crest in there with a snake eating a baby or a snake eating a guy. That's the Visconti family shield.
What lovely people.
Right. I think that it's like Seed War stuff, like the serpent versus humanity. The serpent being, the king of the bad Elohim, Satan.
Well, I think there's actually a passage in Revelations when the serpent comes down and tries to eat the woman or something like that. I could be wrong, but
that sounds familiar. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, the Visconti family, that's their coat of arms, and they released some of the first tarot decks.
Tarot?
Yeah.
Bringing us magic, right?
Right. Let me see if I have anything here. Visconti family is it's like a dragon eating a man. And yeah, they produced the oldest or the first, depending on how you look at it, tarot deck. So there's and then there's the Melusine bloodline. That's another one that's very interesting. Melusine is on the Starbucks logo. And all
it's interesting. In Revelation 12:1-5, the great red dragon, identified as Satan, tries to destroy the woman. So I wonder if that serpent type symbology of them trying to eat a human is, paying homage to that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And that's the dragon. That's the dragon. That could be the same dragon that's on the Rothschilds. Shield, right?
And even Visconti. Even all throughout Asia, like you have the Lee family, which is a royal, Asian bloodline. And they claim to take their genealogy all the way back to the dragon gods. And if you look at the type of biblical Elohim there is, one's called a seraphim, which literally means serpent-like. So it's all there.
Yeah, it's all there. Yeah, the dragon that's on the Visconti shield has a name. I'm blanking on it now, unfortunately, but it's also a name that I've seen in the Bible. It's another word for dragon, and I just don't remember it right now. But yeah, all this stuff I think is linked up. Did you ever come across the Sassoon family?
No, what do they do?
So they've been called the Rothschilds of the East. They were like in the 1700s. They were powerful Jewish bankers in Baghdad, in Iraq. The Sassoons left Iraq and went to Mumbai and got into the opium trade in the 1800s. They were running opium out of Bombay as well. Like they really, and this is heroin. That's what we're talking about here.
Are you
Okay.
talking about the opium wars that destroyed China?
Yes, absolutely. This flows right into that, man. But so they're running out of Mumbai, Bombay, and then eventually China, and they started working alongside the British Empire to sell the opium with China, and they got China addicted to opium, and so much so that it was called like China's Century of Humiliation. Like they wrecked China. There was a war fought over it. China was trying to stop the flow of opium into their country, and they fought Britain over it, and I think lost that war. So yeah, and if you understand this history, like you'll get like movies like Empire of the Sun. That's what was happening at the beginning of that movie, and and comic books like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Alan Moore, he talks about this a lot. But anyway, the Sassoons got like beyond wealthy, get into banking, and intermarried with the Rothschilds. So
There you go.
it
But
is
I would say there's a step above even the Rothschilds, right? So I think there's like two lines of nobility, right? There's the royals that once again are given their regions or principalities to rule over. And then you have this more blue collared class of bloodline, which I think are actually the bankers, right? And if you look at the Rothschilds, they married into a lot of these families, right? And I remember watching, documentaries on how the English royal family just could not stand the Rothschilds, right? They just thought that they were below them. But and I think it all goes back to, like I said, Deuteronomy 32.
Mhm.
All these nations that were created, they all had rulers, and I think they currently rule all these countries. And it's all one big, for lack of a better word, Masonic theater. When you look at things geopolitically, I mean, even if you look at World War I, literally the leader of England is probably Prussia at the time, and Hungary, wherever Germany was, right, or Hungary, Australia, or whatever. Those were all first cousins,
right.
literally.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you see. Like I was looking into some of the families that claim Melusine, which is like a a female Elohim essentially, that is like this siren that's on the Starbucks logo. Well, if you look at that family and look at where all they ruled, it's like half of Europe, man. Like they were everywhere. These families, these bloodlines were very well connected, and they were running multiple countries. And that's the thing. Like the thing with the Rothschilds is that they were secretly cap- Kabbalistic occultists and Sabbatean Frankists, which I know I mentioned that earlier, but that gets bigger on a conspiracy level because from there they may have funded Weishaupt and the Illuminati.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they were. It's been said, it's been suggested that one of the Rothschilds got what is his name? Weishaupt, Isaac Weishaupt.
Isaac Weishaupt. Or
Got
I don't Adam Weishaupt.
Adam or
Isaac.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, they got him to like they all colluded. It was a guy named Frank who was part of the Frank movement. It was Weishaupt and a Rothschild, and they all colluded and started the Bavarian Illuminati. And they wanted to take over the monetary system of countries, sure, but they also wanted to infiltrate the Masonic lodges. And they were posing in the public as like, oh, we're just Jews or we're just Catholics, but they were secretly these basically satanic Sabbatean Frankists because Sabbatai Zebi, the leader of that, was like telling people, oh, you can get redemption through sin. So you can have all these crazy orgies and practice Nephilim magic and get some sort of redemption through that as opposed to like God. And so it gets real satanic, right? But they convinced Weishaupt to incorporate that into the Illuminati. That's what like is laid out in this book called Eliminate the Opiate, about the opium wars, right? Tying that in. This guy named Rabbi Antelman wrote that book and made some of these allegations, and other people have said it
since then and before, I'm sure, but they were trying to infiltrate the Masonic lodges, which we see talked about in some of George Washington's letters. He had friends over there who saw that the Bavarian Illuminati was a thing in 1776, and they were warning Washington, "Hey, man, these guys are. What are you going to do? Like, these guys are going to try to infiltrate your Masonic lodges over there in the New World in America." So there's truth to this, and I mean, Alexander Dugin said that Soros was a part of this too. So there's a more modern example, George Soros.
You know what I also find interesting, as I was doing some research into, the Scythians and these Germanic tribes that go all the way back to Woden, from what I could tell, all these pagan tribes back in the day, they also do human sacrifice and all that type of stuff, but a lot of them went through reforms at some point throughout history later on, and they stopped doing the human sacrifices and things like that. But you know what? Two groups did not stop doing the human sacrifice? The Scythians and those Germanic tribes that worshiped Woden. And they kind of control the entire banking empire today, which brings us all these wars. And what are all these wars? These are mass, in my opinion. Now, they use them for geopolitical reasons to change borders and things of that nature. But I think at the heart of it, these are all huge ritual sacrifices of deceived humans, men more specifically, that get fooled into fighting for these gods that they don't know what they're fighting. And what do you have as a result? Just all this bloodshed, which we know the god of Woden and these Scythians gods, they all demand, and they all currently do that. So I think it's all tied to that as well.
Yeah. Bankers' wars, man. Bankers'
Right?
wars.
And they're all Scythians. You saw that crest of the first person who ran MI6, whose great-great-great-great-grandfather or whatever started a Nottingham bank that turned into one of the biggest banks, with that griffin on his coat of arms. 3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all this, I'll go light. I'm going to tread light on this connection here, but it kind of dovetails into sex magic too, because I think some of these people were using that. I now think that the Nazis were dabbling in that as well, because they had all this material. I mean, the Nazis, when they took Europe, they infiltrated all the lodges and all the occult centers of Europe and took their library, and they restashed all those books at castles. We know now that's what they did. They turned the castles into esoteric libraries. And in the Czech Republic, there was a bunch of material found out there recently, and it was the Nazis like loot of occult material, and it was all like occultism and a lot of stuff in there on sex magic too. So I think that now they were practicing that as well. They were stealing this stuff from the bankers, right? And from the bloodlines and using it. And it's just it's not cool, but it's a insight into what these people believed.
Oh, yeah. It's also an insight saying there's no good when it comes to the levers of control throughout history. I don't think there's any good guys. I think they're all at the core, these occultist bloodlines that go all the way back to ancient Babylon. And like you said, they might have different names and they hide behind the different Abrahamic faiths, which they will soon sacrifice to usher in this mystery Babylon religion. And I think there's a reason why they're making this third war a biblical war, because I think at the end of it, they're going to say, at least the people in charge are going to say, look what the God of the Bible did. Look what these 3 Abrahamic faiths did. They almost ended the world. And I think they're going to use that to get rid of that, monotheism. And I think whatever's going to come down is going to come down. And I think that's when we're going to see this mystery Babylon mixed in with this AI technocratic control grid, where they actually hook us up to this digital god that they are creating. One crazy thing I saw was, Elon Musk created an AI digital girlfriend. All right. And it was a blonde anime babe with these busty breasts or whatever, really kind of perverted stuff. But you know what he named it? He named it Annie, but he spelt it A-N-I. And if you look at the Hebrew definition of Annie, because it's a weird way to spell that in English, A-N-I literally means I am. And if you know anything about the Old Testament, even the New Testament, I am is always reference to God. So they view this as a digital God. And I think they want to hook us up to this thing to actually replace one aspect of God, which is the Holy Spirit. They want to hook us up to this all-knowing being that they created, where we can get any information that we want, which is supposedly what the Holy Spirit does, right? That's why they call it the Spirit of Truth. So I think they're going to incorporate aliens. I think they're going to incorporate digital AI gods and fusing all this together to create this mystery Babylon religion.
Do you think some of these fallen angels want us to usher this in, us to help them usher this in so that they can take their shot at going to war with God?
Yes, and I love that you brought that up, because I believe we live in a world of ops, bots, and psyops. And the world is really ran by these dark art sorcerers that use high impact events that they create, just 9/11 for, an example, to then manufacture the reality that they want. And they use these small magicians, which is the entire influencer industrial complex. And I'm just letting you know, if they're big on social media, whether they're pro-Zionist, anti-Zionist, whatever it is, they're all part of that. And they're actually helping manufacture this biblical end of days, this fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And let me just give you a quick example. If you look at the four major movements within the conservative party, and you can apply this to the Democrat Party, I think, both two wings of the same bird. But the four major movements within the conservative party over the past 4 or 5 years, they all lead to this fulfillment of prophecy. The obvious one is the MAGA movement, right? Which are just proud Zionists, which are actually funding, supporting everything that's going on right now, to the building of the third temples, the growing of the perfect red heifers and all that type of stuff. You then have the second group that I call the disenfranchised MAGA people that are seen through the BS, but they still believe in like an American first agenda. And they're given this guy named Thomas Massey, right? There's a famous quote by Albert Pike, a 33-degree Mason, that says, "Whenever the people need a hero, we shall supply one." And if you look into Thomas Massey, he was actually raised in Demolay International, a Masonic boys youth group, and he's so proud of it. And they wish him, congratulations every 2 or 4 years that he's reelected. You can check it out. But that was named after the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. He has a bunch of investments in AI. He's backed by, Elon Musk pushing him forward, and the whole, mainstream alternative media is pushing that too. So once again, you have this transhumanist push by these guys. The third one is you have the likes of people like Stu Peters, maybe, Nick Fuentes, where it's Jew, 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 Jew. And what does that do? That makes the Jews in America that have nothing to do with the government of Israel, that have nothing to do with AIPAC, start feeling, scared, because they've been programmed, and someone that was raised Jewish, although I didn't believe in God, that idea of the Holocaust and that it could happen again is deep in your psyche, right? You're raised on that. That's like part of your identity. So they're always waiting for the other to put the spell. So you have all these people talking about Jew, Jew, Jew. Guess what? That fulfills this prophecy, because eventually what they want is for all the Jews to return to Israel. And you can actually look this up. There's an article talking about when Stu Peters went on his podcast and talked about a final solution. And anybody starts talking about a final solution, deporting the Jews back to Israel, just understand they're an agent of this fulfillment of prophecy. And the fourth one we have is QAnon, right? Do you know what QAnon says as their unofficial logo? Because according to them, there's this secret group of white hats that are taking over each country from the dark hats. But what do they always say? Saving Israel for last. Right. Well, if you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, what is the end of days? It's a giant war when all the nations turn on Israel. So you can see how through these high impact events, they are manufacturing our consent for them to fulfill this. So yeah, I think they do depend on us by programming what we think to help them facilitate this.
Yeah.
That's long-winded.
No, I like that. I'm glad you went there and talk. I mean, I have no issues with what you just said. I kind of see it that way too. And I think, I was on your show and I brought out that Jeremiah 23, and I got out of the show that day and I thought about, I'm like, why did I totally just on the fly pulled that passage out and talked about it. And I just think it's interesting that passage is talking about
the Jews, the children of Israel, one day being reunited.
Yeah. And like I said, just look at history. And that's why I think it was manufactured, because you look at the Rothschilds, you look at the King of England, who definitely played a big role in facilitating this. I think we can objectively say that they are not on the side of God. In fact, I think they're actively rebelling against God based off the gods that they worship. So the question is then, why try to reestablish this nation of Israel? Why set up World War II where all the Jews afterwards returned to Israel? It's because they're trying, at least my opinion, because we know that they worship these gods who are fighting against God. They're trying to facilitate this to see if God gets pissed enough. I mean, I'm reducing that, to its more simplistic form,
Sure.
to see if they actually send back Jesus and this great battle of Armageddon takes place.
Man, yeah, wow, and I mean, I've got my suspicions with some of the political movements over here. Like, if I hear about anything about this episode, it's probably going to be from maybe some of the MAGA people, because there's still some of those people listening to the show, and that's fine. I want the show to be for everybody. I don't want to alienate anybody, but I think we have to question some of these political movements now, just because we've been duped so many times. I mean, in my lifetime, just alone with 9/11 and with the pandemic, 2020, all those, we just continually keep getting duped by these people, and it's time to, yeah, we want them to do well. Like, we want the current president in office to do good things. We can have that kind of support. Like, I hope he does what's right, but we also have to push back when they don't do what's right. And I'm feeling a lot more at ease with not going after, but questioning Erica Kirk now with this whole. I'm feeling a lot more at ease with it this week because of just some of the stuff that when I see her say that Nicki Minaj has a heart for God, I'm like, hold on a second, what's happening here? I just want to remind people that this whole sort of, what are we going to call this? Like, where with Ice Spice and Little Red and all that, and like that does something that has an impact on the youth.
Oh, yeah.
In a very negative way. I just want to remind people that it was rappers like Nicki Minaj who paved the way for those rappers.
Oh, yeah.
She's like a founding father of this Ice Spice trash. So when I hear somebody telling me she has a heart for God, I've got some qualms with that. And I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay, what's really happening here? This seems like total theater. What are they trying to pull?
But even on the other side of that with Candace Owens, right? That's the thing. They're all controlled, because if you look into Candace Owens, and people are getting pissed at me for saying that, I don't trust any of them.
Here we go.
So if you want to hear me talk crap about the influence industrial complex, and this is the thing, the only thing you can ever accuse me of is shilling for Jesus, if that's what you want to call it. And that's fine with me. But if you look at Candace Owens, who, fighting the good fight, exposing Israel, right? Which is, once again, a stepping stone to the fulfillment of this prophecy. But if you look at her entire career, she started off in Con Inc., right? She worked for PragerU. And if you look at the PragerU right now, guess what? Someone from the 8200 division of the IDF, that's specific with what type of warfare is that? I believe it's psychological warfare, is now running PragerU. And then she moved to the Daily Wire. And, all I got to say is Ben Shapiro, and that he is some type of Mossad asset here. And then she leaves, right? But before that, do you know who she married?
Candace?
Yeah.
No.
Candace, the one who's fighting the system. Remember, she's fighting the system for all of humanity. Do you know who she married?
No.
This guy named George Farmer, the son of Lord Farmer in the permanent House of Lords, who owns a industrial company located in the city of London.
Mm-hmm.
You look at her Twitter profile. What is it? It's of the Catholic Church that has a black and white checkerboard on it, like right there. And this marriage also, if you look into her husband talking about the marriage, right? And both of them talk about it. Do you know they got married after 17 days? Did you know they didn't go on one single date? There was no romantic feelings whatsoever admitted to by both of them. No, this is an arranged marriage, right? Because like I said, they control both sides of the argument.
Wow.
And they are manufacturing it so that the Zionist side eventually loses, because for them to fulfill this prophecy, guess what? The nation's got to turn on Israel. So it's all this stepping stone of manufacturing what we believe through these, heroes that, Albert Pike talked about, that they roll out to us. And I say, just reject it all. Focus on the Great Commission, right? What did Jesus actually call us to do? He called us to, one, have a relationship with him. Love the Lord God with all our heart. And he also called us to love our neighbor like we love ourselves. And he kind of expands that with the Great Commission. He goes, go out and baptize the nations. Go teach everything that I taught you. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to bring people into the family of God. I think a lot of times we lose sight on what the human experience actually is. Oh, I got to have this money, or I got to have, create this type of country. It's no, this experience is a brief moment in time. Read the book of Job. It's all one big test. God is allowing these fallen gods, these demonic entities, to manipulate our reality and rule it to a certain extent as a test to see, what are we going to choose? Are we going to choose our own earthly agendas? Are we going to choose the earthly agenda that Satan has manufactured in front of us? Or are we going to choose God? Or are we going to choose to bring people into the fold? And unfortunately, I think that politics, especially in a world ran by Satan, is an earthly agenda. So I say, vote for these people once a week, but as soon as you start putting your faith in these political people, I think what you're also doing is you're committing idolatry. Because instead of going to God with your problems, instead of going to Jesus and the Holy Spirit with your problems, what are you doing? You're hoping that the government will solve it for you. And I think there's some type of worship that's involved with that.
Woo! Woo! I'm gonna have to throw some fire on this thing, or some water on this thing. We're on fire over here, man. Yeah. No, I like it, man. I like it. I think I don't want to, if you got more to say, I'm gonna let you say it.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to end it, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate your insights. I appreciate all the knowledge that you brought here today. I mean, you laid out a lot of stuff, gave me a lot to think about, gave us a lot to think about. I mean, really, really stellar time here talking with you today, Ben. I'm so happy that we got connected, and what you're saying right there resonates with me. And I'm not even going to try to comment on it. I think you said it all great. So, but I'm just going to say that resonates with me. That's kind of how I see the political theater around us as well. And I'll just leave it at that. But man, it was great having you on. I look forward to having another show with you sometime, maybe multiple talks with you sometime. Let's just do it again. And please, man, if you want to wrap up with anything else, the floor is yours. And otherwise, or whenever you're ready, tell them your deal, where they can find you and all that stuff.
Cool. Once again, thank you for having me on, and thank you for coming on my show. I know the people who watched my show absolutely loved it. And to your point, let's definitely do it again, because you have a wheelhouse. And also, let me tell you something. Did anybody ever tell you have a real soothing voice?
No, I don't get that one a whole lot, but I'll take it.
You have a very kind voice. I think that's fruits of the spirit. But anyways, yeah, let's do this again for sure. And how would I like to end this? God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. That's all that really matters. All this other stuff is just a distraction, right? And sometimes you might need a distraction from the craziness of this world, but don't ever put a lot of stock in it. Don't ever put any of your faith in it. And the one thing I do like about my worldview, right? When you start realizing that all these people are pawns of this agenda, and you lose faith in the system, guess what it forces you to do? It forces you to put all your faith in God. It forces you to put all your faith in Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And I'm new to the Bible, right? I just came to it about 4 or 5 years ago. But to me, that's the point of the entire thing. And you'll be happier. And you can find me at End of the World News. I have a podcast on BitChute and YouTube and across all audio platforms. Or find me on Instagram. I make 3-minute videos about all this stuff and I upload it. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome, man. For everybody listening, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe. Spotify keeps sending me messages telling you guys to subscribe. Apparently I'm not gonna go into it, but yeah, just subscribe to the show. If you're listening to this on YouTube, if anything ever happens to the show, they're starting to, because YouTube's starting to put up definitions for stuff.
beneath my videos. So I don't know where this is heading. So I'm just going to say this now. If anything happens to my YouTube channel, come over to Spotify. The water is warm. This show is doing great on Spotify. I don't mind if you guys jump over here anyway. But that being said, I'm going to have this man's links directly below. So go also show his show some love and give him a like and a follow as well. And as always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.